Hi, this is Anthony Kaoli, Regional Director, Contractor for the Alaska Region TTA Center, and today we're bringing to you a presentation on the ANA Grantee Closeout Process. We have several presenters today. With the Administration for Native Americans, we have Mardella Sunshine Costanzo, the Program Specialist with Tribal Tech, supporting the Administration for Native Americans. We also have Ruthenia Hopkins, the Grants Management Specialist with the Office of Grants Management, and we are moderating from the Alaska Region, myself, Anthony Kaoli, the Regional Director for the Alaska Region TTA Center. For today's webinar, if you have questions, please use the chat box to post your questions, and we'll be responding to those throughout the webinar and also at the tail end of the webinar. Just a quick overview of the agenda today. We're going to be discussing generally the overall process of closing out your grants. It's a dual process that involves ANA and the Office of Grants Management. We'll be providing an overview of the reporting requirements, including the final closeout reports. OGM will be addressing those and addressing any other closeout requirements. Then we'll briefly talk about impact evaluations, sustainability resources, and how to get a hold of ANA and OGM. So now to provide an overall view of the closeout process, we have Mardella Costanza. She's a program specialist, and also we have Mia Strickland, Director of Program Operations, who will be discussing this process, and then Ruth Hopkins with the Office of Grants Management.
I'll speak first. This is Mia Strickland. I'm the Director for the Division of Program Operations at ANA, and I get to work with all of the program specialists who have been working with all of our wonderful grantees over the past several years on your projects. And they keep me informed of all the good things you're doing out in your communities. So now that we've come to the close, or almost the close of your projects for those that are ending later this month, I want to thank you for your hard work and efforts, and hope you've been successful with the funds that ANA has been able to provide, make an impact and change and achieve your accomplishments and goals in your communities. Today we are talking about the closeout process, and we've invited only those grantees who have already closed, those that had language projects ended on the end of July 29th to be exact. And we've also invited the remaining ANA grantees who have said projects. I think those are the only other types of projects that are ending right now, because there are other programs haven't. There may be a few seeds projects that are ending as well. And they'll end on the 29th of September. So we're here to give you an overview of that process, as well as to answer any questions you may have regarding any requirements. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mardella.
Hello, everyone. Just to review quickly, the closeout process, as it's been mentioned, does have two portions to it. There's the programmatic side, and then also the financial side of things. So programmatically, you want to make sure that you're continuing with your reporting. This year was our first very successful year of semi-annual reporting here at ANA. So you should have already done your first semi-annual report, and now you will hopefully be working on your annual report. Your annual report is expected to be turned in 30 days after the last day of the budget period. So our native language projects, that does give you the OER deadline for October 30th, and then all of our other projects, that gives you the OER deadline for December 30th. And this will coincide with also, if I'm not mistaken, the timeline for your financial reports as well. But this is when you'll need to make sure that these reports are turned in, so that they are in the system, so that your program specialist can review them appropriately. You want to make sure that while you're doing that, you're also really consolidating and making sure that you're covering everything that's happened over not just the entirety of the year, but the entirety of the project, whether that's 1 year, 3 years, or more. So this is why this extended time frame is allotted to give you the opportunity to cover that. If you have any additional questions or concerns about content or exceeding the character limits in the box, definitely make sure you reach out to your program specialist. One of the things I always advise my grantees is if you're exceeding the character content that's allowed in the Grant Solutions report, then you would want to make sure that you do a Word document, kind of like an additional attachment, and make sure that you upload it as a grant note and talk with your program specialist to make sure that you have the proper naming convention so that we know where to look when we're looking at that. You can definitely make sure that you want to give us the best possible report. So we are definitely looking for the quality, we are definitely looking for the content. This is going to be how you are recorded in history formally at ANA. So you want to make sure that you give yourself, as an organization, a stellar record and give yourself an A on your report card, and to make sure that everything lines up appropriately. There's no need to feel like if you didn't reach a certain goal that you shouldn't report that as well. We want to know what happened. Did you not reach your target because of X, Y, and Z? Tell us what happened and make sure that we're aware. So this way we know next time around it could potentially help another grantee, another applicant, and we're not going to hold you accountable for the unforeseen complications and challenges that have occurred. But this is all things that you know already. At this time, I will turn it over to Ms. Ruth Hopkins with the Office of Grants Management to go over the standard federal forms and the financial processes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ruth Hopkins, and I work in the Grants Management Office, and we're your financial side, where we try to help administer and review the 425s and try to keep up with payment management to ensure that you all are reported to payment management and that your drawdowns and everything can coincide with one another. The slide we're looking at now is a closeout letter that I should have sent out prior to you all expiring, but I didn't get a chance because I have the grants that start 8/1. So from June up till August, I'm just busy trying to get these grants out. But in the letter, it states that your annual report, you should have submitted by now, like Mardella said, two semi-annual reports. I should have had a semi-annual report that was due August 30th. That should cover a period up to July 31st. And your final report, and that report should be cumulative of all the years that you operated, is due by October 30th. So you should have that report. When you submit your financial report, on the next slide, we try to give you the naming convention on how to upload so that when we go in, we're able to find it quicker. Because sometimes we can have pages and pages of information in Grant Solutions. So when you name the report properly, it's easy for us to find. But also, when we sent out the award notice, we also have an attachment included in the award notice that speaks about when you are supposed to submit your report. So hopefully you all have had a chance to review that. But when you submit your final report, you have to ensure that you have no unliquidated obligations on your report. If you do, it can't be marked as final because you have to clear those unliquidated obligations off. If they're not cleared off within the 90 days by October 30th, you just need to, let me know so we'll know that that report will be forthcoming. Also, make sure that whoever, if you don't do the payment management report, when you submit your final report, your final numbers should coincide with the numbers in payment management. So If you have to speak with someone to help you get those numbers straight, just ensure whatever you submit as your final report, when I go into payment management, I usually give it up to about November, because payment management have to update as well, and to ensure that your final report and payment management is updating properly. And I think I'll talk about another report down the line, because the next slide is the OER evaluation report, and I'll turn that back over to Mardella.
Thank you, Ruth. So the OER, you want to make sure that when you sign in to Grant Solutions and you go over to submit your report, you go to the Objective Project Report link, and then you want to make sure that you select where it says Final. This will be generated just like all of your other reports, so it should be there, and if it's not there, then touch base with your program specialist and Grant Solutions. And then you want to make sure, ensure that in the final OER, you begin to make any necessary additions to the report. And you want to make sure that on the home screen, the cover screen, when you first log in, that you're tagging it as the OER report, as your final report, and you're changing the dates as well. And you want to make sure that you're also updating the signature, the date that's right there at the signature line, since you will be able to essentially e-sign it as you've already been able to do. So you want to make sure that you're taking care of that. If it's not updated, then your program specialist, when they look at it automatically on the cover page, they're going to think that it hasn't been completed. And of course, they're going to go through and look, but that's just going to be another revision that has to get taken care of. So you want to make sure that you go in there and you file it the appropriate way.
I'd just like to add that many of the questions and data fields in the OER they mirror the OPR. It's just how you complete it is different. So whereas in the OPR, when you're doing your semi-annual report, you were reporting for that reporting period, which you're still required to do for this last reporting period. However, for the OER, the data you put into that report is cumulative for the entire project period, whether that was a 1, 2, or 3-year project or beyond. So that is the distinction between OER and the OPR, is the data that's in the report is cumulative for the OER, the Objective Evaluation Report. And I like how Mardella said this is your report card, so give yourself an A. And yes, please do be honest about identifying any challenges or shortcomings, because we do learn from those things, and perhaps we can improve our training and technical assistance or how we approach projects in general based on the lessons that you learned throughout your project.
Thank you, Mia. Before we move on to OGM's forms, I'm going to see if we have any related questions to the OER, and if you do, please type them in the chat box. I haven't seen any yet so far. We'll give that a second before we move on. We'll also give an opportunity at the tail end of this for additional Q&A. So, okay, moving on to the OGM forms, Ruth, and there was a question that came up.
Okay.
Concerning, the question was, could you repeat the guidance on dealing with unliquidated funds?
Okay, I will do that because I'm getting ready to do the SF425 slide, and so I will talk about that again.
Perfect.
Okay. We're looking at slide 9, which talks about the SF425. We ask that you fill out the entire top part. It is very important to us as far as the grant number, your recipient organization, your project grant period that you're reporting on. The 8 will be your project period, and 9 will be the period that you're reporting on. And it's also very important, you see the arrow, to mark which report that it is, because that helps us distinguish what report you are reporting on. So we're talking about the final report. So you have to make sure that you mark number 6, make sure you mark it final. And with the SF425, we need lines 10B through 13 signed. So on line 10, someone asked about the unliquidated obligations. Those are costs where you have not received your invoices as of yet to clear any records. Like if you have a contractual, they may not have sent in their invoice to you so that you can pay them, you will report that as unliquidated obligations. Even though they've been paid, they've incurred, you just haven't paid them off. So when you cannot mark your report final until those unliquidated obligations have been cleared. Also, it's very important that you put your recipient share, because we have to make sure that the amount of funds that you spent, your recipient share should commiserate with the amount of funds that you have spent, because you said that you was going to match a certain amount, and we have to ensure that you did match your amount that you said you was going to match on the NOA that we sent out originally. If you have to review your NOAs that we have sent out over the years, because there are times when we have restricted indirect costs, and for a certain amount of months, or it could be restricted for the whole year, and we normally put a statement to that effect. So we also can't close out a grant if indirect costs have not been released as of yet. So if your organization have received updated indirect costs, it's very important that you send those indirect costs to us so that we can release those funds and send out an amended NOA so that everything can be clear. So in case you get audited down the way and they can read and see that we have restricted those costs until I got an updated rate, we want to make sure everything is clear. So that's on the 425. Also, make sure it's signed by the authorizing official. Then we go to the next page, slide 10. This talks about the SF428 and 428B. By this being a final report, you're required to fill out the SF428B. And the SF428B, you will mark that it's a final closeout. This is the cover page. But then there's also another page that follows that will ask you to select what type of report is it. You know, they have 3 types of reports. If you don't fit any criteria, you will mark none of the above. You will send this cover page here, plus there's another page that goes along with it when you do your final report. On the next page, the 4249, we normally don't deal with this because this is real property, you know, when you're purchasing buildings and construction, and we do not do that with this program. So this is something that may not pertain to you. So I don't think it's something that you have to submit to us because it's not something that we have that's required under this particular program. But the 4248B, yes, you have to submit that when you submit in your final report. And let's see. Okay, the next slide, I'll turn back over to Mardella or whomever to talk about the impact evaluation.
Actually, before we do that, can we see if we have any additional questions related to those forms? If you have one, please type into the chat box. We did get a question about whether we'll make this available. Yes, Charles responded from our team here that we have to make the recording 508 compliant. And also, if you email Mr. Peel, he will send you a PDF of the presentation as well. Okay. So let's talk about the impact evaluations, and feel free to post any questions as they come to mind. Mardella or Mia?
Actually, Anthony, we have Amy Segalkin with us.
Oh, thank you.
And she's the director for the Division of Program Evaluation and Planning. And so she leads the team that does all the impact evaluations, and so I will turn it over to her at this point.
Hi, everyone. So our impact evaluation season kicked off this year in June and is ending in the middle of October. Most closing grants that will be visited have already been contacted and or already visited. But if you haven't been contacted, you're probably not going to be receiving a visit at this point. However, we're going to contact you in the near future so that we can have you share some valuable information with us about the wonderful impact your project had on your local community that you've served throughout the years of your project. So stay tuned for those. There's about 8 folks that we'll be contacting. And if you have any questions on an impact evaluation, whether you're going to get an impact evaluation or what the next steps are, feel free to either contact the evaluator who visited you or is contacting you, or contact your program specialist, and we can get any question answered. And thanks to everyone who we've already visited. I've heard a lot of feedback from our impact evaluators that they've had really, really wonderful trips.
Thank you, Amy. We just added an additional slide here on sustainability, and since we're looking at the tail end of these projects and closing them out, normally we encourage people to address sustainability, at the project design phase, and consider it throughout the project implementation, and of course at the tail end, how to continue sustaining the benefits of the projects. We have done several different webinars addressing sustainability, and I just wanted to point out that these are resources available to you on the ANA National website under resources. If you just click on sustainability resources, you can look at a bunch of the different webinars and tools that the ANA and the TA providers have developed over the years addressing this topic. We put in some just contact information for OGM, and most of you should already have your program specialist contact information. I'm going to go ahead and move this forward to Q&A. Well, before that, of course, your regional TA centers, if you have questions, so you can reach out to them. Here's the contact information for each of the regional TA centers. And so back to the Q&A, we had a question about dealing with property, and this has come up in the past. The question was, how do we deal with transferring equipment procured with ANA funds to a for-profit social enterprise? And maybe Ruth, you could address that issue.
No, I'm not sure on that. I will have to look through the documentation to see how that is done. That's something I have not been privy to do, because that's transferring to another type of organization, and I'm not sure how that works. So that's something.
What about in general, after the grant's been closed out? We received a call once from a former grantee wondering how they could sell their equipment in general.
Because with the new 428 and everything that came out, is a lot of instructions and reading that we have to do to ensure that we're giving the proper information. They have a lot of information already included inside the 4248 and 424B and telling you how you can do certain things. Otherwise, they can go to Part 75, I think it's 320, where they talk about equipment, and after that they start going through the disposition. But this has a lot of information in the attachments that we sent out. When we sent out with the NOA, we send that out, and it does take reading. So I'm not quite familiar with, all the ins and outs. Sometimes I have to speak with my grants officer and maybe talk with our policy on what you do when you transfer equipment. Because usually, if the grantee has equipment, they can still use it as long as they're using it to, along with the objectives of the program that they're operating, even once after the program ends. But once you have to transfer, I will have to, because they have it here. It's included in the 424AB, where you can put down where you want to request transfer to award number so-and-so. But then the agency have information that they have to fill out and things like that. So until I have one that I have to do one, I'm not quite sure what I have to do other than looking at the information inside the 4248 information that we send out to the grantees already.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions concerning the closeout process? If you do, please type them in the chat box, and we'll stand by here for another minute or two and see if we get any additional questions. Okay, Mia, is there anything else that you want to address as far as the closeout?
No, I think all the bases have been covered, and we stand by, all the program specialists stand by to also serve you throughout any questions or issues that come up as you're closing out, as well as your grant specialists. So please feel free to reach out. I do want to make a correction. I believe Guillermo is no longer assigned to ANA grants, so Kim Martin is now the grants management specialist that took over his portfolio, but you should have been notified of that already. So other than that, once again, for those who have a few more weeks, keep charging forward and spend down those funds if you have any remaining, and we look forward to working with you as you close out your grant awards.
Thank you, Mia. We did get one question that came in just a second ago concerning the closeout dates again, and also if they have an invoice that they're waiting for that they haven't processed, how do they deal with that? So basically, what are the timelines that they have for costs that are encumbered or accrued,
Sure.
But not actually paid?
Well, that's why they have 30 days to liquidate any of the funds that they obligated during the project period.
They have 90 days.
Yeah.
But if they have unliquidated obligations, that should have been reported on. These grants that ended July 31st, when they submitted their annual report by August 30th for the period, it should have been indicated on the report as unliquidated obligations, which that's an indication to us that they have an invoice out there that has not come in. But then you have until October, you have to submit your report by October 30th, so to clear it off. If that unliquidated, if the unliquidation have not been cleared yet, then you can just let us know, and that you will be sending your report a little later.
Hopefully that addresses the person's question, but yeah, have any vendors make sure they get you their invoices so you can take care of those expenses.
Thank you. They responded perfect. Thanks. So
Great.
Okay.
Okay, let's looking for any other last-minute questions here before we close out.
Close out the closeout?
Okay, we have one more request to recap the closeout dates.
Oh, okay, that's right, I'm sorry.
Oh, we forgot.
The native language projects, 90-day period would end on October 30th, and the other funding opportunity areas would end on December 30th.
So for projects that ended 7/31, the 90 days would give you until October the 30th. And for projects that end on 9/29, you have until December 30th.
And I want to highly encourage everyone, in the event that there's extenuating circumstances and you may not meet those deadlines, and Ruth had already stressed to make sure you contact her, especially about the financial reports, but also make sure you're reaching out to your program specialist if there's been a computer glitch and nobody has access to Grant Solutions and somebody got sick and now there's a typhoon of things that's happened and you're going to be delayed on your reporting. It's better for us to be aware and to be informed of what's going on than to have to try and make contact and wonder why reports are delinquent.
Right. And in fact, I would actually encourage you to get the reports in sooner rather than later, because unfortunately, I think a reality is that when projects end, staff are dismissed, the staff that worked on the projects, and they are often the fountain of knowledge about what took place during the project. So you want to capture that knowledge and information before it might get dismissed. So the sooner you can begin working on your reports, you still have 90 days to submit, but you definitely want to capture that information before any project staff are dismissed so that you can get their input.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. And with that, we'll go ahead and close out today's webinar presentation on the ANA grants closeout process. Thank you, everyone at ANA, and thank you, Ruth, with the Office of Grants Management, for sharing today and helping guide the process. Guiana, everybody, and take care.
Bye.
Thank you, Anthony.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh.